so we all know what's happening with Julian Assange, and it is remarkable to watch politicians like Tulsi Gabbard have to go on news shows and school journalists about journalism. It's not remarkable anymore, actually, because we all know that, the last couple of years, if not, it has revealed that journalism is in sad shape in America, that they're not really journalists, that, as Chomsky has said all along, that they're just there to repeat or forward the ideas of the elite and the ruling class. That's who they represent. That's why they're there. And if they didn't think the way they think, they wouldn't be there. If they thought like me, they wouldn't have a job. If they thought like Ed Schultz, they get fired. If they thought like Phil Donahue, Jesse Ventura, Ashley Bent, they get fired. That's what happens. Okay, so all those people who have those jobs there are people who, wittingly or unwittingly, toe the company line and never say anything to upset them. All right? The donor class. You know what I mean? So and it is amazing to watch them get this Julian Assange thing wrong. It's just amazing. It is amazing. So here's Glenn. He says, when you see professional media figures decrying Julian Assange is not a journalist, or decreeing Julian Assange is not a journalist, compare how much corruption and criminality by the world's most powerful factions that they've exposed in their work to how much Assange has exposed. That contrast will tell you all you need to know. Yeah, so look at the pieces of it who are saying Julian Assange isn't a journalist. Contrast their work at exposing the powerful with Julian Assange's work exposing the powerful. Compare and contrast. Here's one more tweet from him. He says, also the question, is X a journalist? As though it's a credentialed licensed status, like being a doctor or a lawyer, is deceitful. You don't need to get a credential to be a journalist. We're all journalists. We all get the protection of the First Amendment. You know how you're a journalist? You call yourself a journalist. You know how I became a comedian? I called myself a comedian. I got on stage and I made people laugh. That was it. I didn't have to go to a certification. I'd have to go to a college. I didn't get a degree. The same thing with journalism. There are people who go to school for journalism. Those people are known as chumps. And usually shitty journalists. I can't tell you how many horrible journalists come out of the Columbia School of Journalism. I mean, rock bottom, horrible conspiracy theorists, no standards or practices, fucking horrible journalists come right out of the Columbia School of Journalism. You know that. And then they all go to work over at Mother Jones and MSNBC. So also, the question is X a journalist, as though it's a credentialed licensed status like being a doctor or a lawyer, is deceitful. The First Amendment press freedom protects an activity available to everyone. So it doesn't just protect a certain class of people doing something. It protects anyone doing something. And what is that something? Journalism. And what is journalism? Journalism is looking down the street and reporting back to people what you saw. That's what journalism is. That's all it takes. They can't even do that. You see how they lie about Syria, and they lie about Venezuela, and they lie about Ilhan Omar, ubiquitously. So the First Amendment press freedom protects an activity available to everyone, not just a designated priesthood called journalists. That's very important to remember. And so I showed you yesterday. Let me find it. Neera Tanden. Well, I showed you here. So here's what. So now people like Neera Tanden hate Julian Assange. Why? Because Julian Assange revealed that the Clinton campaign was cheating. And that they're all big cheaters. And they revealed a lot more. Here's something that they revealed about Neera Tanden specifically. And who is Neera Tanden? She was a Hillary Clinton campaign advisor. She runs the Center for American Progress, which was started by John Podesta, correct? Or he was also a chair at one time, Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager. And now she's the head of the Center for American Progress, which is a misnomer because they're not for progress. It's the Center for American Corporatism. They should be called CAC, Center for American Corporatism. And so if you look, Neera Tanden hates Julian Assange. There are many cultists on the site. This is her tweet about Julian Assange being arrested. But the Assange cultists are the worst. I thought it was the Bernie Sanders cultists, but it turns out it's the Assange cultists are the worst. Assange was the agent of a proto-fascist state, Russia, to undermine democracy. That's not true. That's made up. She's lying. That's not true. Even James Comey said that WikiLeaks got those emails from an intermediary. So that's not true. Was the agent of a proto-fascist state, Russia, to undermine democracy. No, what undermined democracy was the Hillary Clinton campaign completely rigging the 2016 primary. That was what undermined democracy. So now we have Donald Trump because people like you, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Brazil are freaking cheating liars. That's why. That's why we have Trump. Not because of some proto-fascist state. Not because of because of you. We just know about it. You know what WikiLeaks did? They went around spreading the truth about you. And so here's one of the things that this is an email from Neera Tanden. This is about Libya. And there, that was Hillary Clinton's big doing. She went into Libya. She was the big push. She was had a State Department, a Secretary of State, and she pushed Barack Obama. She was to do that. They did that. They turned Libya into a failed state right after she did Iraq. Remember, we didn't vote for her in 2008 because of Iraq? Well, she became Secretary of State, and she did Libya. Turned it into a failed state, again, under a pack of lies that we're trying to help people. This is Friday, October 21st from 2011. This is from Neera Tanden to someone named Faiz Shakir. She says, and the subject is, should Libya pay us back? That's what it says. Should Libya pay us back? So I'll read it to you because I know it's small. It's hard to see. I'll read it to you what it says. She says, we have a giant deficit, meaning a budget deficit in the United States domestically. We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil, meaning Libya. This is Neera Tanden talking. We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. She sounds like Trump. Hey, let's steal if we're going to go overthrow their country and turn it into a failed state with open slave trading and a haven to terrorists, let's at least steal their oil. She sounds like Trump because they are the same. Neera Tanden, they are the same. Why do you think Hillary Clinton went to their weddings and their daughters are best friends? They're the same. Oh. We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. So she's saying that Americans don't want to do foreign adventurous wars anymore because it costs us so much. But if we could just find a way to pay for them, we could start killing motherfuckers all around the world and everyone would cheer us on. People are only upset about Iraq and Libya because we didn't steal their oil and pay for it. She sounds just like Ted Cruz and Trump, right? That's Neera Tanden. This is known. This is known. So if you get a chance to interview Neera, she'll bring this up. We have a giant deficit. They have a lot of oil. Most Americans would choose not to engage in the world because of that deficit. No, most Americans don't want to do a regime change war because we're not bloodthirsty fucking maniacs who think dead bodies equal profits. That's why. That's why Americans don't want to do it. You out of touch 1% maniac, bloodthirsty maniac. Neera Tanden. If we want to continue to engage in the world, this is what WikiLeaks revealed of Neera Tanden. If we want to continue to engage in the world, meaning if we want to continue to bomb the fuck out of people, kill them, we better start stealing their natural resources when we do it in a more blatant way. Because right now we're just making the weapons manufacturers happy and rich, and we should actually steal their natural resources in a more blatant way. So American people will be for it. This is what she's saying. She says if we want to continue to bomb the shit out of the world, gestures like having oil-rich countries partially pay us back doesn't seem crazy to me. That's Neera Tanden. That's Neera Tanden. That's a psychopath. That's us after Libya. She's saying this. That's a psychopath. That's a bloodthirsty psychopath who thinks dead bodies equal money and that's all they care about. Hillary Clinton said Iraq's a great business opportunity. That's who these people are. They're lying, cheating psychopaths. And now she's the enemy of journalism, too. She's just like Trump. She's in bed with Trump, wanting to imprison journalists for journalism. That's who these people are. Fascist megalomaniacs. Let's see how she ends the email. Do we prefer cuts to Head Start or the WIC program or Medicaid? Because we live in deficit politics, and that's what is happening and will be happening even more. So she's like, hey, they're going to cut domestic programs because we have to keep doing these wars. And shouldn't we just steal their oil and stuff so we don't have to cut programs at home? Let's go kill other people, pillage their country, steal their natural resources, leave them in a failed state so we don't have to cut programs back at home. Do you see how crazy? Like that's, again, that's not over-the-top hyperbole. That's what this is. Megalomaniac, crazy people, bloodthirsty, neoliberal corporatists who think dead bodies in the Middle East equal profits. And now you know why Neera Tanden hates WikiLeaks. Now you know why Neera Tanden hates WikiLeaks and calls people who defend journalism cultists and the worst cultists. That's what Neera Tanden is saying about people who stand up for journalism. She's in bed with Trump, imprisoning journalists. That's what she's doing. These people are fascist maniacs. And this is your Democratic leadership? This is the Center for American Progress? If there was any decency in politics in America, she would be cast out of polite society for this. But they're all in bed with Trump. They'd rather have Trump president than Bernie Sanders, which is why we have fucking Trump president. It's not because of me or Susan Sarandon or Jill Stein or somebody else with no money and no power. It's because of Neera Tanden and Bill and Hillary Clinton. And Barack Obama, who failed this country on purpose, who was a gangster from Wall Street, and he kicked Americans out of their houses and gave those houses to fucking criminals on Wall Street. And then he goes to Italy and wags his finger at Americans. Why don't they vote? And then he comes back and he tells progressives, stop being purists. So that's who these people are. You want to know, and she calls... So the Associated Press tweets out, the latest Russian President Vladimir Putin spokesman says Russia wants Julian Assange's rights to be observed following a... Isn't that weird? Somebody who's supposed to be a big thug is actually demanding rights for a journalist? And guess who isn't? Neera Tanden. Guess who is a fascist? Neera Tanden. Guess who's in bed with the dregs of society? Trump. Neera Tanden. Doing what? She wants to shit on you if you call for rights for a journalist. Do you see who these people are? Do you see why you can't vote for Hillary Clinton? Do you see why you can't do that anymore? Do you see that we can't tell these people that you have my vote no matter what? That's why you can't do that anymore. It's time for a real fucking revolution, not incrementalism. And shame on you, fucking shame on you for shaming anybody who stood up to this fucking stupid duopoly that tricks you every 4 fucking years to vote against your own goddamn interests. You want to know why? Nancy Pelosi, who the fucking every progressive just voted for as speaker, you know why she didn't fucking indict war criminals who are now running our foreign policy again? You know why she didn't? Because she would be indicted. Because WikiLeaks revealed that too. Why is she for imprisoning Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning? Because she's for it too. Because she was in it. Guess what this is? This is from WikiLeaks. Revealed this. This is the member briefings on enhanced interrogation techniques. So what they had to do, the intelligence community, the torturers, the criminals, what they had to do was they have oversight in the Congress because they work for us. They're supposed to, but they don't. So they have to brief members of Congress. And this was revealed by WikiLeaks. It says, this is from September 4th, 2002. Type briefing, subject, briefing on EITs, which is enhanced interrogation techniques. Enhanced interrogation techniques. That's what we call it because we're Christians. If we were Muslims, we call it torture. But we're Christians, so it's enhanced interrogation techniques. Muslims do torture. We do this other thing because we're fucking maniacs. And we lie about it to ourselves. Briefings on torture, including the use of torture on Abu Zubaydah, background on authorities, and a description of the particular torture that had been employed. And who did they tell? Who was this? And in September of 2002, who did they brief? Porter Goss and Nancy motherfucking Pelosi.
That is her middle name.
So Nancy Pelosi knew about torture in 2002, which is why she said when she got control of the House in 2006, torture, that impeachment's off the table because she didn't want to have to answer for this. It's a big club and you ain't in it. You're a chump if you think Hillary Clinton was your fucking savior. And you're getting ready to do it again. They're going to cheat Bernie again, and then he's going to tell you to vote for fucking Joe Biden. And meanwhile, the planet's going to melt. And we're going to have 10 more wars. And they're going to start imprisoning even more journalists. So that's why. That's Nancy Pelosi's name. So do you see right there? It says a director. So there's another briefing. This was on September 6, 2006. It says the director named all 13 tortures at this briefing and verbally described most. Specific mention of waterboarding, water dousing, stomach slap, wailing or walling, and the methods used to carry out these techniques. And who did they tell? They told, if you look over to, it says the full committee. Now you know why. She calls people who stand up for journalism fascists. Do you see how we're living in 1984? This is Hillary Clinton's campaign. This is Hillary Clinton's friend. This is the head of Senator. She's welcome on liberal talk shows all the time. She's calling someone standing up for journalism a fascist. She's calling someone standing up for human rights a fascist. Do you see how fucking maniacal these people are? The mendacity. That's who these people are. Here's Nancy Pelosi's name. There it is, September 4th, 2002. She was briefed on torture and all the torture America was doing in our name, and she didn't say a goddamn thing. So Nancy Pelosi's complicit in war crimes, which is why she said impeachment's off the table. Here's some more. There's a briefing from November 1st, 2005. It said interrogation techniques briefed on interrogation techniques, including waterboard, facial slap, abdominal slap, sleep deprivation, and walling. And who did they tell? They told the Senate leadership. They knew about it. Isn't this awesome? Here's a briefing from September 6, 2006. The director provided significant details naming all the tortures and providing a verbal description of most of the tortures. There was also a specific discussion of waterboarding. And who did they tell? They told Harry Reid this. And Bill Frist, the Senate leadership. That's who they told. And what did Harry Reid do about it? Not a goddamn thing. They're complicit, which is why George Bush was never investigated. They never had a fucking hearing about this because they're all in on it. There's another, same thing. Who'd they brief on this time? The whole committee. So your government's also, you come to me now. So your government's already been stolen from you a long time ago. And WikiLeaks reveals that. And there's a lot of asswipes running around thinking Trump stole their government. Your government was taken from you a long fucking time ago. And the Republicans agree with Trump. He's not a special kind of Republican. They did the Southern strategy since frickin' Nixon. He just says it out loud. Jeb Bush just was interviewed on CNN, and Kyle Kalinske reported it out that Jeb Bush agrees with all Donald Trump's policies. They just don't like that he tweets nasty stuff. So the idea that Trump was a special kind of crazy that we had to get rid of, Jeb Bush just said you were wrong about that because he agrees with them. Jeb Bush. So this is what's going on.
Can I just highlight for you, Jimmy? Somebody was talking in the chat. They want to know what was walling, and it's a method of torture used by CIA in which person's neck is encircled by a collar and is then used to slam the person against a wall. According to the information gathered by the International Committee of Red Cross from 6 detainees, walling meant beating by use of collar.
Impeachment's off the table. Why? Because you're complicit. Because you're all goddamn war criminals. And that's why Julian Assange is in prison. And I'm glad that the people on the left are waking up to that, maybe. YouTube has been silent on Julian Assange the last 3. Not this show. Not us at Aggressive Progressives. We've been screaming about this loud and clear. We've had clarity, moral clarity on this. No trouble. Again, this is something that even a guy like Tucker Carlson can get right. So this isn't a hard thing to get. So all the people who've been silent for the last 3 years, thanks for waking up. I'm glad you got your head out of your ass. So that's the world we're living in right now. And when people do good work, do good journalism, they're jailed. When people tell the truth about Russiagate, they're smeared, slandered, and never apologized to. In fact, they keep doing it. Look how people are still going at Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mattei, and Michael Tracy. Look what they do to those. Look what they're doing. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. They're in bed with people like Max Boot, David Frum. So this is the world we're living in right now. And Bernie is equivocating. I haven't heard. Can you go to, Jared, go to Bernie's Twitter feed and see if he said anything about this yet. This is a time for real leadership. So everybody was pretend screaming about journalism when Trump was being an asshole to Jim Acosta, and everyone was, so they were all, that's called virtue signaling, right? Isn't that what that is? Mm-hmm. They signaled their virtue that they care about journalism, but now here it is, you really care about journalism? And this is why journalism is failing. And this is why anybody who wants to be in this club needs to get their goddamn head examined. Anybody who goes to that goddamn correspondence dinner, and if you go there for any other reason but to expose them as frauds, you're part of the fucking problem. Randy Credico, a fucking jag-off nightclub comedian, had more courage than all those people at the correspondence dinner last year. He stood up for Julian Assange. And you know what they did? They tackled him, cuffed him, and threw him out of there. And not one fucking reporter reported it. You know why? Because they'd have to say we're pieces of shit. And Julian Assange is right, and so is Randy Credico. Room full of assholes. I've been in a room full of assholes like that when I was at the Oslo Freedom Forum.
Oh, my God.
Fucking room full of journalists who are mouthpieces for the military-industrial complex. And I stood up then, and I'll stand up now. Bernie has said nothing about this. There's your moral leader. And when they cheat him again, he's going to tell you to vote for fucking Joe Biden. So it would be nice if someone who has Bernie's ear could tell him to get his head out of his ass and start saying something about fucking journalism instead of saying something about Jim Acosta, which is pretend. There's a real crisis happening. When you're done spitting out the CIA talking points for their pretext invasion in Venezuela, maybe, Bernie, you could fucking start talking about Julian Assange in a constructive way. Because this is the world we're living in. Torturers. The guy exposes torturers. You know, we're living in a world where people who expose crimes are considered criminals. What's that saying? When exposing crimes is treated as a crime, you're being governed by criminals? I'm sure I'm butchering that, but that's what we get. Of course. Barack Obama tortured Chelsea Manning. Why did Barack Obama torture Chelsea Manning? Why did Barack Obama torture Chelsea Manning? Because Barack Obama wanted Chelsea Manning to say that Julian Assange assisted her in getting those documents, so then they can go after Julian Assange. But she wouldn't. Chelsea Manning wouldn't lie to get herself out of being tortured. Naked, 24-hour surveillance in a cage, not allowed to sleep. And they put her back in jail again for the same reason. Anybody, you're afraid of fascism? You're afraid, you want to speak out about Trump and his racism? Speak out fucking now about Trump, what he's doing against Julian Assange and journalism right now. Do it now. You got all day to talk about, why don't you take a break from fucking repeating Rachel Maddow's Russiagate bullshit, and then maybe you could talk about Julian Assange. Anyway, so there we are. So Bernie's still moot on this one. It's still a moral dilemma for Bernie. Fuck. We have such fucking poor choices. The best. Bernie's the best choice. Well, Tulsi, I've got to say, really showing courage on this one. Tulsi came out and unequivocally supported. So it's nice to see her to the left of Bernie on this again. And to the left of her critics, ironically. Next live Jimmy Dore show is June 5th. That's a Wednesday at Hermosa Beach Comedy Club in Hermosa Beach, California. Go to jimmydorcomedy.com for a link for all tickets. We might be coming to your town. And if you love the show, please become a patron. Please support the show. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And please click that bell and make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are already subscribed, they unsubscribe people every day. Just check. Thanks for your support.